I often ask individuals regarding their financial journey, and I get some really good reasons why they can't start. For instance, I don't make enough money. The stock market is too complicated. I don't know anyone who doesn't have to work. And what I've come to the conclusion is that even a really good reason could be an excuse.
Everyday people working 9 to 5, saving up that money, trying to survive, investing in the future, trying to be wise. We're gonna be money heroes. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Nik Johnson, host of Everyday Money Heroes, and I've reached early retirement. I'm here to provide information on how to obtain financial independence and inspire you through sharing stories of everyday people who are turning knowledge into freedom.
That hustle, always reaching for the sky. We're gonna be money heroes, never gonna shy.
Hello and welcome to Everyday Money Heroes. We provide information and inspiration to people of all ages to take control of their financial journey. I'm your host, Nik Johnson, and today I'm going to wish you a happy new year. This is the first episode of the new year, so I hope that everything is getting off to an amazing start for you. But it makes me think as well. Most individuals look at the start of the new year as an opportunity for new beginnings. We set goals, resolutions, and things of that nature. And so, what I like to do right now is share some information about resolutions. I really like to find statistics to support the things that I am discussing. And so, I found a very interesting article from Vanguard. I made sure to link it to this episode, where they state that 75% of Americans fell short of their savings and spending resolutions in 2025. So 75%. So we set those goals in January, and somehow along the way, we fall short. So 75% of them failed to meet those resolutions. But most are optimistic, per the article, that 2026 will be their year for a resolution rebound. 84% of Americans have a financial resolution for 2026. So we know that having our finances in check is extremely important. And so I'm not surprised that 84% of Americans have a financial resolution for 2026. With building an emergency fund and using a high yield account for short-term savings goal as the top two resolutions, which is good, even though in my mind's eye, you want to make sure to have your emergency fund inside of that high yield savings account. So, despite the majority of the 82% feeling somewhat or very confident in their abilities to achieve their financial resolution in 2026, there are some generational issues cited here as far as being able to achieve those resolutions because of obstacles. First of all, boomers who were born between 1946 and 1964 are most concerned about unexpected expenses. So 29% of those individuals. Millennials who are born between 1981 and 1996 reported struggling with insufficient income. So 22% of those respondents had that. And then Gen Z for individuals born between 1997 to 2012 is most likely to just live beyond their means. And that's 15% of the respondents. Also, I'm a little upset that, Gen X didn't get any love. I'm Gen X. What's going on, Vanguard? But I'll cut you some slack there. But overall, this is some very interesting information. But also, overall, of the respondents, 22% of them said they had uncertainty about their ability to meet their savings and spending goals. Okay, so they kind of attributed that to economic uncertainty. Things like layoffs. I'm sure is probably the largest thing. And so, thinking about those resolutions and things like that, We being in the first month of the year, I have to pose the question, how will you use this year to achieve your financial goals? I often ask individuals regarding their financial journey, and I get some really good reasons why they can't start. For instance, I don't make enough money. The stock market is too complicated. I don't know anyone who doesn't have to work. And what I've come to the conclusion is that even a really good reason could be an excuse. So, what I wanted to encourage you to do this year is that we're not going to allow any good reasons to keep us from starting our financial journey or living a life of financial independence. What I'd like to do here today is provide some things to think about as we are in the resolution season. Okay, we're thinking about, physical things, physical goals. A lot of times, it's lose weight, stuff like that. But what we're going to do is also think about our financial independence journey. All right, so these are some things we're going to think about. So before I get into those things, I would like to ask you to subscribe if you are watching on YouTube. Um, if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, that you would follow Everyday Money Heroes there as well. And if you don't mind, sharing this with a family member or friend or on your social media, okay? So let's go ahead and talk about this. You might just be starting your journey, okay? So this is the first year, and you might have that resolution that, hey, you know what? I am going to get things right. I am going to go ahead and start, and that's okay. And so if you are just starting on your journey, let's start off with thinking about all the things that you can do. First of all, let's start off by learning the basics. Understand the different types of investment accounts that are out there, the different types of equities like ETFs, mutual funds, individual stocks. Learn why compounding is so very powerful. You can track your finances. You can create a budget, calculate your fire number, which is 25 times your annual expenses. Um, Start that emergency fund, open a brokerage account. Also, connect with other people who have decided to get right with their money. This could be coworkers or looking for FI groups in your community. You don't have to think about all the things because it can be a lot. But one thing you have to do is remember that you can't have momentum if you don't start. Don't strive for perfection, just progress. That's what's really important. For those of you who are out of the blocks. So you've already, you've discovered financial independence. You believe that you can achieve it. And so you've already started with some of the things I've already mentioned. So you are out the blocks and you are in accumulation mode. Okay. I'm going to encourage you to stay the course. Some people call it the boring middle. I personally like to call it the messy middle. Um, I get it. This phase can easily take 10 to 12 years. There is a saying, a watch pot never boils, which means time seems to pass much slower when you're anxiously waiting for something to happen. I admit that the last few years of my journey, I review my accounts every day, seeing how close I was to hitting that marvelous number. Um, I was fortunate in that I didn't learn about early retirement until around 4 years until I reached it. Now, granted, I had already been putting the things in place needed to achieve early retirement, but I did not know that it was a phrase or a term called fire, anything like that. So I was fortunate that I was only there for 4 years until I actually reached fire. So I believe that I had something to do with it being so close that I was always watching it all the time because it was still relatively new to me and stuff like that. It would have that would have not been sustainable for a couple of decades. That just would have been just a difficult thing to do to go and run and look at your accounts every day for 10 to 20 years. You definitely want to check your accounts, but don't forget to live life. I encourage you to continue to learn more regarding your personal finances. I believe no one will care for your future like you will. So you have to be a lifelong learner. Also optimize where you can. You can do things like travel hacking. You can, optimize your accounts. There are many things that you can do, but just keep in mind that this is a time where individuals may think about taking a mini vacation, or I won't necessarily call it mini vacation. I'll call it mini retirement or sabbatical. That's okay, but be careful if you do this too early in the accumulation phase. It can impact that sweet, sweet compounding we need to reach financial independence. So keep that in mind. I know people that took sabbaticals and leave of absence. That's fine, but what you don't want to do is if you're just starting your journey and you are at year two, and um, you decide to take a year off or 6 months off when you're not generating any income, we can actually invest into the market or pay down bills and things like that. So just be mindful of that. So say for instance, you might say, Nick, I haven't just started. I'm just now at the block. I'm actually getting pretty close to the end. You know, um, Based on my calculations, I'm only about a year or two away. Well, that's fine. I've got some thoughts for that as well. So if you do find yourself in a situation where you're only a year or two away from your target number, um, I'll let you know, first of all, that that last year goes by so fast. I remember I was like 48 months, 47 months, 46. I remember counting that. And I remember when I got to 1 year, and I was like, okay, I got 12 months left. Those last 12 months went by so fast because, it just, I was getting there and I was excited and a whole lot of stuff. Okay. What I suggest to you individuals who are getting close um, to you know, that the end. If you're getting close to the end and you're a year or two away from that, I suggest you might want to start thinking about what do you want to do? What will your financial independence life look like? When you start that business you always wanted to start because you are free to fail now if things don't work out? Will you volunteer or just slow travel all over the globe? Remember, the goal isn't to retire. Remember, the goal is to retire to something. Okay, if that's what you want to do, retire to something. Start dating things. I know I started screening organizations and causes I wanted to donate my time to around that last year of my journey. So I started volunteering I volunteer at AARP. I started going to some of there are nonprofits here. I started volunteering with my kid's school. So I started doing a lot of things that I didn't necessarily have a lot of time to do before, as I was kind of laser focused on just kind of getting to that number. I started to look around and say, okay, what am I going to do with all this additional capacity that I have once I no longer have to work anymore? And so once I retired, I was already plugged in with some organizations or some activities. I started playing golf too. So I did start doing that. I started going to the gym more frequently toward the tail end as well. It was just kind of important that I wanted to just go ahead and have a routine in place as well. So I started going to the gym. Um, just several things I started doing or identified that I wanted to do leading up in that final year. So once we have that identified, you want to just go ahead and make sure that you have something to go to because, like I said, I play golf. It's fun. You can lay on the beach. Some people even choose to drink every day, but you can't do that forever. Okay, so what you want to do is have something to look forward to in retirement. That's why I'll say this much. I hear individuals say that, oh, if I don't work, I'd be bored. And I really don't understand that because People work from Monday to Friday and they're excited when Saturday and Sunday come. And so why would there be an issue if you could treat every day like Saturday and Sunday? I don't get it. But individuals say that, but I think it's because they don't necessarily think about, okay, there's so many things that they could be doing with their time. Okay? So let's talk about individuals that this is the year. Okay, it's time for you to cross the finish line. You have hit that 25 times number, or maybe you want to do 30 times, whatever that number was, you have hit your final number. And this year, you can see the finish line. After years of saving, investing, and living below your means, you've made it. You should be proud. But there is a disease that strikes those who are about to cross the finish line. For some, it's anxiety. Others, it might be fear. Some of these individuals, you'll find that they might even self-medicate. How will they self-medicate? They will self-medicate by taking one more year. This is only kicking the can down the road, okay? Because when you get to the end of that 1 year, it's a good chance that you're going to have the same anxiety and fear that you had the year before. And so, what are you going to choose to just take one more year again, which could be a tragedy, in my opinion. And so, if you think about it, after 10,000 hours, you're considered a subject matter expert. Okay. So if you convert those 10,000 hours into working hours, that's around 5 years. So you have been on this journey. Most people are on this journey somewhere between 10 to 20 years. And so you have exceeded the industry standard of being a subject matter expert. And so you have to trust the numbers. You know, I and my wife, we had the pleasure of being interviewed on CBS Sunday morning last year. And one of the questions they asked us, which didn't make it into the interview, they recorded this right after the huge dip that happened April of last year, of 2025. And they said, hey, you're early retiree and the market has taken a huge dip. How do you feel about that? And I told them that I have to continue to trust the numbers. If the numbers told me I could stop working, the numbers are telling me that I can continue to not have to work. And so that is what I told them. And so you have to trust the process. Okay. Run your numbers again. It's okay. Go through, I went through the Monte Carlo simulations. I use, all the tools. I use projection lab and fire calc and all the other stuff. And I ran through those numbers a lot. And I was like, okay, what about 95% certainty, 90% certainty? I went through all that. And then I had to get to the point where I had to trust the numbers, okay? But when you are in the phase where it's time for you to cross the finish line, take your prize. You've earned it. I admit I had cold feet. I gave in. I worked one more year when I really didn't have to, but I did it. I can tell you all, I've never met anybody who has been able to retire, who regrets it, who was financially independent and had a community to engage with and causes they are supporting. So that's extremely important. That's why I mentioned that in the previous step. You want to make sure to start identifying things, have a community, continue to have purpose. Okay? Finally, how about us who have crossed the finish line? Hopefully, you're focusing on two things. That is health and having a positive impact. Having a positive impact is extremely important. You want to make sure that you are making your community a better place. Uh, Most of us have had to put exercise or even eating healthy meals during our accumulation period on the back burner. So now it's time to focus on those things so you can optimize your time by having the strength and energy to do the things you like. When it comes to impact, how will you make a difference this year? Will you find an organization that can't afford a full-time employee but is in desperate need of help? Will you find a cause like helping veterans, the Humane Society, or conducting a fundraiser or making a contribution of your own. I know personal finance is my passion, so I conduct financial literacy workshops in my community to encourage individuals to start their financial journey. That's what I do because I'm like, hey, you know what? I believe that anybody who wants to achieve this can achieve it if they're willing to put in the work. Okay. In closing, you have the power to have a great year. I believe in you and I'm here to support you however I can. Don't hesitate to reach out. And I mean this sincerely. In closing, I want to wish you a great day. I want to wish you a very prosperous and joyful year. I'm going to ask you once again if you have not subscribed, if you're on YouTube, please do so. If you are listening to this on a podcast platform, that you would follow Everyday Money Heroes there, that you would also like and share this content with other folks. As always, my name's Nik Johnson. I'm your host, and I'm going to ask you to trust the process. Have a great day.